Good evening, everybody. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Prince Hall Think Tank. The title of this today's episode is Prince Hall Freemasonry in the Sunshine State. I'm Ken Collins. I'll be your host for the evening, and we'll be discussing matters that will deal with the birth of the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge of Florida. As a disclaimer, none of the content and or opinions reflect the Grand Lodges or subordinate lodges to which we hold membership. The purpose of today's show is to discuss the concept of history and how the evolution of history takes place. I'll allow my guests, my other hosts, to introduce themselves. We'll start off with Brother James Morgan.
Good evening, everybody. Want to apologize for the technical difficulties that we were suffering this evening. But I am James Morgan, past master, Corinthian Lodge number 18, where I also serve as Worshipful Associate Grand Historian for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia, where our Most Worshipful Grand Master is the Honorable Philip David. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here with everybody here this evening, and I'm looking forward to the discussion as always. I guess I'm going to send it over to, let's send it to the rookie, past master Curtis Black.
Always picking on the rookie. Hello, everyone. My name is Past Master Curtis Black. I'm a member of James E. Carter Lodge number 157 under the jurisdiction of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas, where the Honorable Wilbur M. Curtis currently presides as our Most Worshipful Grand Master. It's always a pleasure to be amongst a group of esteemed brethren. I hope you enjoy the show tonight.
Now we're going to pass it over to Brother Dave Gillarm.
All right, thank you for that. Looks like I got the night off. I'm very appreciative of that. My name is Past Master Dave Gillarm. I'm a member of the Mount Pisgah Lodge number 53, located in Columbus, Georgia, where Cornelius Wilson Jr. serves as our worshipful master. And I also have the pleasure of serving as the worshipful grand historian for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, where the Honorable Bruce A. James serves as our grand master. I just want to thank you all for your prayers in the passing of my uncle, Reverend Larry Jones. It really meant a lot. We laid him to rest on yesterday, so definitely thank you all for your prayers and your well wishes for my family, especially my aunt. They would have been married for 40 years next month, so definitely thank you for your prayers.
Thank you, Dave. I just want to give another introduction. I'm Ken Collins. I'm a member of Pride of North Birmingham Lodge number 319 out of Birmingham, Alabama, where I serve as the Right Worshipful Grand Historian for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alabama. I always want to give a special thanks and shout out to my Grand Master Corey D. Hawkins and my Worshipful Master Tim Sanford. As we get into today's discussion, we want to open it up to the conversations of how history evolves. 9 times out of 10, the history that we typically have on our institutional organizations are given from a specific narrative. Sometimes those narratives have validity. Other times those narratives are based off of sometimes fabrications. But throughout the course of the history of our Grand Lodges, of our independent lodges, our subordinate organizations as well, what we have to find is that delicate balance of the narrative, but we also, as historians and researchers, we go back to try to identify the specific conversation that we're having. And what we're going to do, we're going to actually take a look into what happened with the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge. None of the conversations that we're having is try to attempt to destroy anybody's credibility or reputations, but it's merely an updating of information that we found over the years. Brand new things are found every day in Prince Hall Freemasonry, and there's some new things that we actually came up with dealing with the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge, among others. Some things are good, some things are bad, but as they say, history is history. The historian, one of the historians wrote a letter to Harry Williamson, and he said, "Don't be mad at me. I'm a historian, and I don't write. I don't write romance novels." And I think in the course of history, we have to actually tell the truth about what actually happened, and not try to create a narrative that makes us feel better. So we're going to go ahead and jump in this, and we're going to start off with Brother Dave Gillarm. to open things up.
All right, thank you for that, Brother Collins. Before I get into my presentation, one thing I guess, kind of want to put out there, that the most versatile Union Grand Lodge of Florida has a historian. To my understanding, they already have a history book, and they have quite a few other things. And as Brother Collins stated, our intent is not to discredit anyone. Therefore, usually I upload my presentations afterwards. I would not be doing that after this show. In order to receive a copy of this presentation, that request needs to come from either the Grand Master or somebody or his designated representative, and I will send it to them, and then they'll distribute it as they see fit. The last thing I want is somebody running around using my presentation, trying to discredit the Grand Historian for Florida, and I don't want that to happen. So now we're going to go ahead and get into this. It's hopefully you all will be able to get something at the end of this presentation. Can everybody see it okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The name of this presentation is called Through the Fire. The reason why I named it Through the Fire is because a couple years ago I was trying to do some research on Florida history, and the only thing I had ever been told was all our records burned in the Great Fire in Jacksonville, so we really don't have any early history about Florida. And then as I continued to dig, I found there were records available prior to 1901. You just have to do a little digging. So that's why I kind of named it Through the Fire, because I had to push through in order to do some research on Florida history. Now we're going to start with in the beginning. And what you're reading right now, if you go to Union Grand Lodge of Florida's website and click on their history, what this is basically word for word from their history. And it starts off in 1865. Brother Charles F. Daly accepted the Deputy Grand Mastership for the Southern Jurisdiction under Hiram Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. Brother Daly received his first 3 degrees in a lodge in Liverpool, England. He received a Scottish Rite in Glasgow, Scotland, and was knighted at Greenock, Scotland. And as I stated earlier, this is straight from Union Grand Lodge's website. Then later on, it goes on to say in 1867, the first 3 lodges were established by Brother Daly. That was Solomon Lodge number 50, St. John number 51, and Mount Moriah number 52. And on 17 June, the Grand Lodge was formed. Harry H. Thompson was elected Grand Master, John H. Robinson, Deputy Grand Master, Robert Smith, Grand Junior Warden, and James Robert Grand Junior Warden. So right now, all I'm showing is exactly what is on the website, what is the official history for Union Grand Lodge of Florida. Now, we're going to actually get into what actually happened regarding the formation of Prince Hall Masonry in the state of Florida. The first thing I want you to notice is the first arrow beside Most Versatile Joseph Robert Love, Grand Master Jacksonville, because he was the first Grand Master in the state of Florida, not this Harry H. Thompson. And I'm gonna get more into that later. Charles Daly, and I didn't include these 2 slides in this presentation. I was trying to keep it as short as possible, but I am going to post them into the group. Charles Daly had defected from the Most Versatile Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, free and accept the Ancient York Masons, and he called a convention in 17 June 1870 and organized what was then the Most Versatile Grand Lodge of Florida. This was an independent Grand Lodge, and as you can see in that first paragraph, it's still the same lodges: Solomon number 50, St. John number 51, and Mount Moriah number 52. So it was Daly that called this convention. Here's the thing about Daly. Daly starts off by saying that he was a Special District Deputy Grand Master for Harmony Grand Lodge of Delaware. Then he gets appointed as a Special District Deputy Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. And now these are both quote unquote compact Grand Lodges. So he jumped ship from the compact, and now he becomes deputy and for Hiram Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. And it did not happen in 1865. And as late as 1869, he was still with the compact in Pennsylvania. So he organizes this independent, or he calls a convention to organize this independent Grand Lodge, which is where the second arrow comes into play. And it specifically states the Grand Lodge for the state of Florida is independent of the National Grand Lodge and was formed as all regular Grand Lodges should be after the precedent of 1717. So the talk of Florida being under the National Grand Lodge in 1870 is incorrect. Hiram Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, which was really just a nickname for this particular Grand Lodge, but for instructional purpose, I'm gonna call it Hiram Grand Lodge. They were independent. Florida's Grand Lodge in 1870 was independent of the National Grand Lodge, and this talk about it being irregular is a completely false narrative. The Grand Lodge of Florida was a regular Grand Lodge and was in amity with all other independent Grand Lodges, which you're going to see on a later slide. And my source for this is the 1871 proceedings of the Grand Lodge of Ohio on page 14. This source is from 1872 proceedings of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Florida, pages 23 and 24. As you can see here, it goes into the name of the Grand Lodge, Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Ancient York Masons. And just because you see York, most people get confused thinking it's talking about the original National Grand Lodge. It had nothing to do with it. This one was completely independent of the National Grand Lodge, as you already seen, and you're going to see again on further slides. But you see these three lodges coming together to form the Grand Lodge. It also mentions the other two lodges that were compact. That was Prince Hall number 15, which is located in Jacksonville, and Harmony Lodge. As of right now, I haven't been able to find out who exactly chartered Harmony Lodge. The narrative that all lodges were chartered by Hiram Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania is also a false narrative. Prince Hall was definitely chartered by the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. If you need to see proof of this, I have no issue with posting the proceedings showing this lodge on their roster. And this is why they were not invited to the formation of the Grand Lodge, because St. John, Solomon, and Mount Moriah were all independent lodges. The other two were compact. So when the Grand Lodge formed independent, those two lodges were left out. Also, to get further in a little bit into it, Georgia and Alabama were also in union with the National Grand Lodge. If Florida would have been compact in 1870, Georgia and Alabama would have never been able to charter lodges there, because we'd have been chartering lodges in a territory occupied by a Grand Lodge we was already in amity with, and that just simply didn't happen. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide, which shows that the Grand Lodge of Florida, established in 1870, was no way, shape, form, anything involved with the National Grand Lodge. This source is from the 1873 proceedings of the Grand Lodge of Arkansas, page 23. And as you see on item number 4 on the independent, you see Florida listed. This Alabama, that's listed as number 2. This is the Grand Lodge of Alabama that formed in 1870. Alabama also had a second Grand Lodge that formed in 1874, which chartered St. Luke Lodge in Pensacola, Florida. And as you see on 17, Georgia had 2 Grand Lodges as well. The first one in 1870 was in union with the National Grand Lodge. The one that was formed in 1874 was independent. So as you see, the independent one in Florida, 1870, the Grand Lodge formed in 1870 in Florida was an independent Grand Lodge. Here's another source from the 1874 proceedings of the Grand Lodge of Connecticut, page 7 and 8. And you'll see the list of Grand Lodges under the compact, and you see the sovereign Grand Lodges or independent Grand Lodges, and you see number 7, Florida is listed. So from here on out, there should not be any confusion. Florida, established in 1870, was independent. It was a regular Grand Lodge, so it's all this irregular talk. Then being involved with the compact is a completely incorrect narrative. They were a regular Grand Lodge. This is all other regular Grand Lodges. And as you see here, these list of sovereign Grand Lodges, this is who all they would have been in amity with. The first picture, the picture you see on the left, is straight from Florida's website. And it lists H.H. Thompson as the first Grand Master in 1870. But he was not the first Grand Master. And on the right is actually a picture of the first Grand Master of Florida, Dr. Joseph Robert Love. So how was this confusing? How did the wrong person get listed as the first Grand Master in Florida in the first place? And I stated earlier, because there were two Grand Lodges in Florida. And the confusion came in with Union Grand Lodge, which was the name of the Grand Lodge that was established in 1870. This also was, the convention was held in Jacksonville, and it was called by the Worship Master of Harmony Lodge. So there were 6 lodges represented at this formation. You had Mount Moriah number 12, which is located in Key West, and that was chartered by Georgia. You had St. Luke number 6 in Pensacola, that was chartered by Alabama. Harmony Lodge in Jacksonville. You had Prince Hall, also in Jacksonville, which was chartered under Massachusetts. You had Mount Olive. Now this is pretty much, Mount Olive located in Tallahassee, but right now it's just an educated guess as that it was chartered by Harmony Grand Lodge of Delaware. I haven't seen anything official, but there is, if you go to the African Harmony Grand Lodge of Delaware, which is currently subordinate to what we now call PHO, on their website, they do mention this lodge being chartered by them in Tallahassee. But one thing I'm pretty much sure on is that Mount Olive was a compact lodge. And then you have Island City Lodge that was represented as well. So these lodges came together to form Union Grand Lodge. Now, this source is from the 1876 Proceedings of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Alabama. The reason why it's so important, because Alabama, one of Alabama's lodges had to leave, and the Grand Master at the time was a member of the lodge in Pensacola. So he had to resign and say that, he had to step down because his lodge had left to form in with another Grand Lodge. And also pay attention to the list of officers on the left. on the right, which I'm going to emphasize on this next slide. This is straight from, the left side is from Florida's website, and the current, and on the right is from the Alabama's Grand Lodge proceedings. So what happened, and the reason why there was so much confusion, is because the history of the Union Grand Lodge, established in 1875, was transposed onto the history of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Florida, which was established in 1870. So if you read it on the left side, this is strictly from their website, and they say how the Grand Lodge was formed with Harry Thompson and John H. Robinson and Robert Smith and James Roberts, and how they were the first principal officers. Then if you look right on the right side, you can see exactly how the mistake was made, because that is the history of the second Grand Lodge that was formed in 1875, and they just took that history and put it on top of the Grand Lodge in 1870. And those people, such as Joseph Robert Love, were essentially erased from history. So this is how the mistake was made. One little tidbit, one thing that kind of stuck it out for me, is the Grand Junior Warden, James A. Roberts. That's because he was the first worshipful master of Mount Moriah number 12, which was chartered by my Grand Lodge. So as soon as I seen his name, I instantly knew that something was wrong, because there's no way that he could have been the first probably the first Grand Junior Warden of Florida, when his lodge didn't even come into existence till roughly about 1874, 1875. This is what you're looking at now is this is strictly from our Grand Lodge Proceedings book. This is the original wording on the charter uh, that was sent to Mount Moriah number 12 in Key West in 1875, and it lists and the first name listed is James A. Roberts, which you just seen on the previous slide was the first Grand Junior Warden of Union Grand Lodge. Now, to continue with this, you see this is also from my Grand Lodge Proceedings book, and you see Mount Moriah number 12 listed in Key West, Florida. Also, in addition to this, when the two Grand Lodges merged in 1879, they kept the name Union. So when you start to look at this, let me see. Yeah, so they kept the name Union. So that's also was confusing as well, because now you had the 1870 Grand Lodge was the most worshipful Grand Lodge of Florida, Ancient York Masons. You have the second Grand Lodge, which was started in 1875, called the most worshipful Union Grand Lodge. And then when they merged in 1879, they named the Grand Lodge the most worshipful Union Grand Lodge. So that's pretty much ends up my presentation. There's some other stuff that we're gonna talk about with Brother Daly. Those claims of him being a member of the Grand Lodge of France, and he stated he was a member of La Cour Sincere Lodge number 141. It's completely false. There is no evidence that this man was ever a member of the Grand Order of France, that he was ever made in England, or that he ever did anything anywhere. He just kind of showed up on the scene, said that he was a Mason, and everybody kind of believed him. To this day, I have yet to see his name on any lodge returns anywhere, but he was definitely involved in Florida history. There's stuff about his personal life that really doesn't add up either. The only thing that we can be sure of is that he died in 1885. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Brother Ken Collins.
Thanks so much, brother Dave. We really appreciate that. And you know, the funny aspect of talking about Florida and what CF Daly did in terms of the Union Grand Lodge, or the formation, early formation of what later became Union Grand Lodge, is something that plagues, I would call, African American Masons, and Masons as a whole in a lot of the colonial areas, is the concept of degree peddlers, people coming from overseas, having, and what I consider, with an accent, educated, um, uh, able to move within society, and they purport to be more than they are, and then they're able to push the degrees off on people. Not only that, the concept of Daly himself, because what Brother Gillarm and I did, I went through a ton of returns, from not only the Grand Orient of France, but also some of the returns from the Supreme Council of France. But then I looked and looked and looked for this man's name and could find him nowhere. Not even in some of the local returns and census documents in St. Thomas, if that's where he's supposedly actually from. But to keep it going even further, when you start to look at some of the Scottish Rite degrees, when you start to follow his trail, you still don't see him. One of the major things, or major themes that I'm looking at, is also following where this guy actually came from in terms of him being a 33rd degree Mason. So it's going to have to be a, stepping back and starting to reconstruct who this guy was, where he was from, so on and so forth, because I think that might be actually a great episode of looking at, who is degree peddlers, past and present, and what that actual impact did to Prince Hall Freemasonry and other organizations as well. But for now, I think we're going to move on to Brother Morgan, and then we'll have Brother Black come up immediately afterwards.
Man, why do I always have to follow behind such great presentations and things, man? I think this is a setup every time, every time. But Brother Gillarm, I think that was excellent. I learned a lot, and I'll admit, you know, when I was told that had decided that we were going to do Florida jurisdiction, I thought that was a really interesting thing, because I admit that Florida is not something that is not a state in general that I'm as familiar with, whether it's inside of Masonry or outside, even though I've been there several times. So I learned a lot from listening to you, Brother Gillarm. For that, you have my thanks, and hopefully I can try to match it a little bit. I don't know what I'm going to do, but we're going to try today. Let's see here. We're going to go into this presentation now. Hopefully you all can y'all see? Can somebody give me the okay? Can y'all see?
Yep, got you.
Oh, all right, very good. So the topic of my presentation tonight is something that is very near and dear to my heart for a number of reasons. We're going to be talking about a Florida freedom fighter this evening. Before I begin, I want to make sure that I send a special shout out to Miss Dana Saxon and her family, because they've supplied me with a lot of great information on the brother that we're going to be talking about tonight. A good portion of this presentation and the information that was given, that is going to be given tonight, was given to me, by her and her family, and so I want to make sure I send them a special shout out as well for allowing me to discuss what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Reverend and Brother Thomas W. Long. As you can see in the picture there, he was a pioneer of African Methodism in the Sunshine State. And Brother Long had a very, very interesting life, which we're going to get into this evening. As Brother Gillarm alluded to earlier, and I think, and somebody remind me now, I think about, sometime last year on this show, I think we did a show on the AME Church, did we not? Can I get an affirmative on that? I think we did. So this is, again, you see how a lot of these things get reincorporated in. The further we study, sometimes we go back to those basics that we talked about. Now, Brother Long was born in the year 1839. He passed in 1917, and the AME Church was truly, truly at the heart of his story. Okay, he was the son of, his son's name was Charles Sumner Long, named after the abolitionist Charles Sumner, and this shows you right here how entrenched that Brother Long was in the liberation of African American people. Again, having been born in 1839, just shy of 1840, the experience of slavery is something that he knew all too well firsthand. Brother Long actually stated that his father had been enslaved in Africa, and that his father actually was of the Zulu tribe. So we're looking at a brother who actually was aware of his African heritage and actually had spent some time with his parents and learned some things about his African culture. And that's something I think that we don't talk about enough in the experiences of some of those brothers from back then, is their recollections or their discussions with their family members, even going back beyond the Atlantic Ocean. And that's something that we can discuss even outside of Prince Hall Masonry. He also had a sibling named Roderick Long as well. And the interesting thing about this family now, and their father, James Long, was actually enslaved in Africa, brought to Cuba, and James Long moves from Cuba to Florida during the 1830s, and probably had some involvement in the Seminole Wars. His father actually had worked for his freedom. Thomas and his younger brother were born in the city of Jacksonville, so I think we just discussed Jacksonville a little earlier. Now, Brother Long's mother, having been having been enslaved at that time, giving birth to two boys, therefore they inherited the status of their mother and were born into slavery, unlike their father. However, I believe that Brother Long, probably knowing that his father had worked for his freedom and seeing that, he probably would have aspired to get his freedom. But the times as they were, he probably also felt as though, why should I have to work for my freedom? Something that God had already granted to him when he invested his body with a human soul. That's something that I think played a major part in Brother Long's life, as we will see momentarily. As an adult, Brother Long actually did serve in the Civil War. Here we have his enlistment record. He and his brother actually were enlisted into the 33rd Regiment of the United States Colored Troops. And this was something that would have been very empowering to Brother Long, as we can imagine. Again, I think we did an episode on this very show discussing Prince Hall Masons in the Civil War. So here we have another excellent example. Brother Long, having been formerly enslaved to by Mr. John Roberts, would have definitely seen the the glory in not only serving in such a righteous cause, but also, even for selfish reasons, saying, hey, if we win this, we can actually end this very, very oppressive system. Some interesting things about Brother Long's time in service is that there is actually mentioned, there's a history book written about the 33rd USCT that talks about Brother Long and how he learned to read by utilizing the Bible as one of his first real texts that he would read, that he learned to become a literate man in. And there's actually talk in the 33rd Regiment about how he had a very, very keen religious leaning. Even during the war, he would preach to U.S. Colored troop soldiers and would actually use Bible verses and whatnot to encourage them through some of the thickest fighting. And there's actually recollections of this by other soldiers about him, which I thought was very, very amazing. Brother Long also performed scouting and espionage and exploratory missions as well. So again, he's penetrating it past Confederate lines to try to find out where they're going, what the troop count is, etc., and reporting back. And this is a very, very dangerous job for our brother down in Florida. We've also found, and let me see, I don't know if y'all can see the mouse moving here, but we've also found Brother Long as a past master of Sumner Lodge number 18, which was located in, I believe it's Ocala, if I pronounced that correctly, in Florida, in the jurisdiction of Florida. This lodge, unfortunately, as far as I know, no longer exists. This record is actually from Florida's 1886 proceedings. And so we know that Brother Long was an active Prince Hall Mason before 1886, although I have not been able to locate those records. The fact that we have him as a past master in 1886 in this lodge indicates that. Unfortunately, it seems that Sumner Lodge 18 surrendered its charter in 1887. So this was the last, what you're seeing before your eyes is the last record that we currently have of this lodge. And although I have made a sincere effort to look for the members of this lodge after the fact, I found some of them in other lodges, but I could not locate Brother Long in any other Masonic proceedings after the 1886 date, although we do know that he was still residing in Florida. So that's something, again, that we have to go back and research, and perhaps maybe we'll locate him in another lodge, or maybe we'll find something else out. But for right now, we do know that he was a member of Sumner Lodge number 18 and indeed had served as a past master. After the war, Brother Long actually got involved in a lot of great community-oriented things, and probably most famously, he was actually one of the first trustees at Edward Waters College, also located in the city of Jacksonville. For those brothers and sisters out there who may be listening in, if you graduated from Edward Waters College, one of our proud HBCUs in that HBCU tradition, how many of us knew that we had one of our Prince Hall affiliated brothers from the past who had such a deep involvement with this school? Brother Long also served in the Florida State Senate, as well as served as a superintendent of schools in the Jacksonville area from 1868 to 1869. Okay. Edward Waters College was named after Bishop Edward Waters, who was the third bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Again, I think we talked about that in the past. So here's a picture of Bishop Waters. I'm not sure if Bishop Waters had any involvement with Prince Hall Masonry or not, but if anybody out there, maybe who's listening in on the chat or on our Facebook group or what have you, happens to know that information, maybe you can pass that along and you'll teach us something. And maybe we can talk about that at another episode if we are able to locate him at another time. This is a photo of Centennial Hall. at the historic Edward Waters College, located in the city of Jacksonville, one of their major buildings on the campus there. And Edward Waters College is a very, very important institution, as are all of our HBCUs throughout the country. Edward Waters College actually, the original campus actually burned down in the Great Fire that occurred in Jacksonville. So again, going back to Brother Gillarm's presentation, we talked about a fire, if I'm not mistaken, earlier, right? Well, here we again. So you see how sometimes the history does end up overlapping. Okay. And also here we see a photo of the Board of Trustees from Edward Waters College. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Brother Reverend Long is listed right here in the front row there. I think it's very important that we remember the trial and the legacy of brothers like Reverend T.W. Long. He actually was, to me, very representative of the brothers of that time who had influence early on in Florida's history and indeed in a lot of jurisdictions at that time. I wanted to kind of close out with some words from Miss Dana Saxon, who is the great granddaughter of Reverend Long, who's a friend of mine. And you know, when I found out about her ancestor and she was talking to me about him and whatnot, I said, you know, I wonder if he was a Prince Hall Mason. And I did the research and we found him in the proceedings. And I just had to tell his story because I thought it was so amazing that this man had the level of fortitude that he did. Miss Saxon says that T.W. Long took great advantage of a brief period of segregated opportunity in the United States before the emergence of Black codes and Jim Crow laws that created innovative new barriers against Black people and families. Having spent a year as superintendent of schools in Florida's Madison County, he served in Florida State Senate from 1873 to 1879, and he was later a founding board member at Edward Waters College in Jacksonville. He was ambitious and unquestionably proud, having died in 1917 at the age of 78. I couldn't say it any better. He was ambitious and unquestionably proud, and that to me is one of the reasons why we see this photo here, which I believe is the only portrait shot that exists of him. Reverend Thomas W. Long was indeed a pioneer of African Methodism in Florida, but as far as I'm concerned, he was also a pioneer of Prince Hall Freemasonry in the Sunshine State. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you guys. I hope everybody enjoyed.
Thanks so much, Brother Morgan. We're going to go to Brother Black. He's going to give us some extremely interesting information on what he calls the Great Schism in Florida. Over to you, Brother Black.
Thank you. First of all, with regards to, as our panelists will say, that I am in no way, shape, form, or fashion a fan of clandestine masonry. I want to say just ahead of time, irregardless of whatever happens in a Grand Lodge, it is never okay to leave and start your own Grand Lodge and claim that it's legitimate. I don't even know how to say it. I am totally against any form of clandestine masonry, but reading through the history of Florida, the most worshipful Union Grand Lodge of Florida, you find a common adversary, and that's past Grandmaster John H. Dickerson. Elected in 1899, he succeeded past Grandmaster S.H. Coleman. Now, Grandmaster Dickerson's troubles, they didn't just begin when he became Grandmaster. His troubles began far long before he became Grandmaster. In 1896, he would be the Florida grand jury will return a true bill against him, and it would be stemming from an accusation of him having sex with an underage child, which was 16 years old. He would be released on bond, him and others, but later on in the year 1900, those charges would actually be dropped. Be held, in charge. He would be charged with another criminal act, which would be assault against a lady in 1901. But those charges would eventually be dropped. During that time in 1901, as he was charged with that second one, he would actually openly, say that it was members of the Grand Lodges who was after him. So immediately after those charges were dropped, Dickerson went to work. Okay, the first thing that he did, after the court cases had settled, he set his sights on the ancient accepted Scottish rite and the shrine. In 1902, he reorganized both bodies and actually placed himself at the head of both, which means he was deputy of the Orient and he was a deputy of the desert, for the shrine in both states. After that finished, he actually turned his attention to the heroines of Jericho. Now, what's interesting about this is that the heroines of Jericho had their own benevolent fund. They also were an incorporated body, which means they basically govern themselves separate from the Grand Lodge. Dickerson did not want that. He wanted them to move from where they were at their home location and move to the new Grand Lodge in Jacksonville, and they refused to do it. And also, he wanted them to turn over all the courts that were under the Grand Court and turn over that benevolent fund account. Um, when they refused to do it, he forced brothers Thaddeus Gaines to actually hold an annual session in Tallahassee, Florida, in which he actually reorganized the Grand Court. Now, the old Grand Court was called the General Grand Court, Heroines of Jericho, state of Florida. The new Grand Court was called the Union Grand Court, but he didn't stop there. He turned his attention to the Order of the Eastern Star, Bethlehem Grand Chapter, in 1903, and exactly like the same exact thing, same model that he wanted for the Grand Court, Dickerson wanted to control the benevolent fund, of the Bethlehem Grand Chapter, and he also wanted them to move to Jacksonville as well, and they also had an incorporated status, so he wanted them to dissolve that incorporation status and take control of that benevolent fund, and which would have brought them to the mercy of the Grand Lodge. He would eventually pull recognition from that Grand Chapter on September the 8th, 1903, and he would remove a sister by the name of Jane Parker, who she served as a worthy Grand Matron, and he would replace her with Sister Hannah Herndon, and also Brother Charles Patterson, who was serving as the Grand Worthy Patron. He would remain in that seat because as people, I don't know if people in Florida know, that was actually her grandson. But 3 years later, Dickerson would appoint himself as Grand Worthy Patron, and he actually held that position simultaneously while he was Grand Master of Florida. Brother James Banfield and also Brother Thornton A. Jackson would preside over the election and also the installation of the newly formed Grand Chapter officers. In 1905, Dickerson went after the Holy Royal Log Mason, the Grand Chapter, Holy Royal Log Mason, and also the Grand Commandery of the Knights Templar. He would remove then past Grandmaster Reuben S. Mitchell, who actually was serving in the capacity of both the Grand High Priest and the Right Eminent Grand Commander, and replaced him with Brother John G. Riley in both houses. Dickerson then would place himself as Grand King in the Holy Royal Log, and then Grand Generalissimo in the Grand Commandery. Now, during the same year is when he would actually come face to face with Brother C.C. Manigault. And C.C. Manigault at the time was serving as the chairman of the Masonic Benevolent Association funds. Brother Manigault and others would actually openly defy Dickerson and accuse him of misappropriation of the funds that were in the Benevolent Association, and they would actually take him to court behind this, but they lost the case. I imagine, in my opinion, Dickerson was probably furious after this, because after they came back from court, he began suspending and expelling everybody and anybody who said anything against his administration, and even anyone who questioned his authority, they were either suspended or expelled. Now, with that happening, you start seeing that people in the jurisdiction are beginning to be disgruntled. Their lodge members, chapter members are being, just blatantly, expelled, suspended. The grand chapters are being reformed. He's placing himself in these positions, of power, and he's actually the conservator of the craft for the Florida jurisdiction. So in 1909, after serving as Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge, Brother Manigault, along with some other former members and also current members from the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge, would form the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Florida, Free and Accepted Masons. Now, I'm going to make this special note. In the past, we've seen that it's been said that Manigault he stole the charter of the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge of Florida. Let me be frank. Grand Lodges do not have charters. Okay, what he stole was a facsimile of the charter of African Lodge number 459, and the only thing that shows is that Prince Hall received a charter from the Premier Grand Lodge of England in 1784. Okay, it does not prove that they are legitimate in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It just means that Manigault, was a thief. Okay, and he succeeded in taking that charter, and that they actually used that charter to incorporate themselves in the state of Florida. After that, Dickerson he again went at the Grand Court hearings of Jericho, and in 1909 he actually would suspend Brother J.R. Scott. On June the 30th, a committee on appeals would actually uphold that suspension. So he also withdrew recognition a second time from the hearings of Jericho, forcing Brother J.R. Scott out, and he attempted to exert his power on Sister Sally King, who was at that time the most ancient grand matron for the hearings of Jericho in that state. It didn't work. What happened was, her, saying that she would not yield to Dickerson, Brother J.R. Scott, Sister Sally King, and the entire cabinet of the Grand Court left, and they aligned themselves with the new Grand Lodge, with the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Florida, Free and Accepted Masons. Dickerson would eventually expel them, but of course they were already gone. He would replace her with Sister Maddie C. Wilson, and as a most ancient Grand Matron. Now, just in conclusion, it's clear, by the timeline of events, that there was some confusion and dissension among the members of the Florida jurisdiction. Dickerson's ways, whether they agree with those ways or they didn't agree with those ways, it makes no difference. And there's, like I said before, there's absolutely no justification, for anyone to leave and form a Grand Lodge. That's why you're allowed to vote. That's why you have committees in place. That's why you're able to pass resolutions. Anytime someone leaves a Grand Lodge, and begins their own Grand Lodge, the only thing that I can think of is they were too afraid to stand up, or they didn't know how to. So that was the only way that they saw fit. But Manigault, being a past Grand Secretary, I'm pretty sure that he knew what he was doing, and there was no question about it. He saw it as a way to, as he was saving the members and former members of the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge of Florida, but in reality, all he did was hurt the membership. Okay, I will never understand why it happened, because it should never happen. But I do know this, that the schism that happened in Florida was not as a result of Manigault. It was a result of Dickerson. He is the one who caused the schism. Manigault is the person who reaped the benefits of the schism, and that was starting a new Grand Lodge. And at that, I'm gonna go ahead and that's all of my presentation right there. There's more to it, but we don't have that much time, and I don't have that much time that I need to, talk about this. You guys can ask questions whenever you're ready.
We really appreciate that, brother Black. That's a great explanation on what happened with the Great Schism there in Florida. And brother James, I forgot to jump in. You always give great backgrounders in terms of the what I like to call the symbiotic organizations that run hand in hand with the Prince Hall Grand Lodges and the Prince Hall Masonry.
Hey,
One of
Brother
the
Collins.
yes, sir.
Um, just want to add in a couple things from Brother Black presentation. This is all just a personal opinion, but I believe that the events that led up to the schism, as brother Black stated, it was a lot of them. But one other item that I feel that Florida actually contributed in was what they were doing with the facsimile of African Lodges Charter. Now I'm going to read this word for word. This is from their 1886 proceedings, page 7, and this is stated by Grandmaster Valentine. He says they were working on establishing recognition with the Grand Lodge of Cuba, and they were mentioning Abraham Lincoln Lodge number 11, which was their lodge that was full of Cubans. And it says, at our last session, we forwarded to Cuba a copy of our first charter granted us by Great Britain, which with the proceedings of our Grand Lodge. So when you start looking at this, Florida was having multiple facsimiles of African Lodges Charter on hand. And if they sent this to Cuba, it's a good possibility they would send this to other people. But they had all these copies on hand for some unexplained reason. And that's what allowed C.C. Manigault to even come in and be able to steal a facsimile. It wasn't as if they just had just one, they had multiple. What their purposes were, I have no clue. Why would they send this to the Grand Lodge of Cuba? I have no earthly idea, because African Lodge had nothing directly with it wasn't like African Lodge was tied to the Union Grand Lodge of Florida per se. So there was no reason for them to send African Lodge a copy of their charter to anybody, but they were doing it. And then by them having that copy on hand, or those copies on hand, that allowed the door to open up. And as I stated earlier in the week, there were members that had issues with Dickerson in the first place. Dickerson was Deputy Grand Master about 25 days after Grandmaster Coleman's death, which happened very tragically. It seems as if people thought that Dickerson had something to do with Coleman dying. So now he wants to be installed as Grand Master. Nobody wants to install him, including past Grand Master Reuben S. Mitchell. He says no. He has Dickerson going all over the place, and Dickerson's doing it thinking that Mitchell was going to install him, and Mitchell basically plays him and says, "No, I'm not going to do it." And so he reaches out to William Edward Terry of Georgia and has him come into Florida to install him, only because he wanted a past Grandmaster or a Grandmaster to install him. He didn't want anybody else. So that was the start. So when you talk about the Great Schism, there was a lot of issues with Dickerson in the beginning that led up to all those events. But that's what I have, Brother Collins.
Let me jump in here just for a brief second. I think that there's lessons to be learned all the time from history, and the lesson here is that, to me, for every yin there's a yang. You know what I mean? And so when you have somebody who's elected to the office of Grand Master or President of the United States or the king of whatever country or whatever it's going to be, even in your your day-to-day usual vocations, when you have somebody who has a certain energy, you're going to have the opposite. In nature, they say for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So you can't have Superman without Lex Luthor. You can't have Batman without the Joker. And in this particular instance, I think we see firsthand. We have Dickerson here, and then you get this brother Manigault, and then it becomes what it is. So I think I've seen some people in the chat asking about how could this happen? Oh my God, Well, the thing is, if we're not properly educated and properly vetting our leadership, regardless if it's in the 1800s, 1900s, 2000s, or whenever else, then you're going to get problems that come up. And again, when there's an action, there's going to be the reaction. That's just what happens. And so I think that's a lesson for us to learn, and also to remember for ourselves when we're in these positions of leadership. Because let's be honest, I mean, it's a lot of us have a lot of leadership positions, and when we're in that capacity, you know, we want to puff our chests up and whatnot, but in reality, we should be humble and recognize that we're not all powerful as human beings. We come on this earth and we don't necessarily know it all, you know. When I was master of my lodge, you know, I told people all the time, I loved hearing no, because I want to hear other people's ideas. I didn't, you know, I liked hearing other ideas, and I would go with it if I thought it was good. But the thing that you have to remember when you're an authority figure is that while you have the ability to make the decision, you also have the obligation to listen and to recognize that, you know, you can't do everything. So that's just kind of my feelings on it.
And if y'all allow me to just chime in, just to piggyback off you, brother Morgan, and everyone, you know, I didn't do the presentation to in any way, shape, form, or fashion, shed any bad light, on the Most Worshipful Union's Grand Lodge of Florida. That is our sister Grand Lodge. I have many, many friends down there, good brothers down there, good sisters down there in that jurisdiction. The only thing I wanted to do is to show what could happen when that type of situation arises. And, we ourselves, as master masons, as members of our jurisdictions, are charged to be conservators of our organization and to protect it, from that very thing happening. Now, does it happen? Yes, it does. I mean, it's happened throughout history. We can look back at several Grand Lodges and see that those things happening. But like I said before, that does not negate the fact that the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Florida, Free and Accepted Masons, or AF and AM, whichever one they want to call themselves, because they bounce back and forth, since the late 20s and the 30s and the 50s. It does not negate the fact that they are indefinitely a clandestine Grand Lodge and will always be, until they come home, again, where they belong. Um, and that's really all I have to say about it. I just hope everybody enjoyed that presentation.
Absolutely. We thank you. Good job. Great job, brother. Brother Black and brother Morgan gives us another view in terms of leadership. But, one thing that I thought that we definitely should do is, kind of just go back and take a look at how things were set up. Because the issue of there's a lot of information that comes out in terms of not necessarily knowing where lodges are coming from at the start of Grand Lodges. And sometimes if you don't have the materials available, the best thing that you can do is to go back to other Grand Lodges, CCFC reports. You have to fill the gap some way. In particular, a similar situation happened in Alabama, where we have a listing of all of our Grand Masters. However, it's one gap in 1774, 75 that we didn't know who our Grand Master was. So I keep asking, like, what's going on? And even to this day, the true story, we don't have the true story. But what we end up finding out is the guy that served as Grand Master is gone. We don't know if he died. We don't know if he was removed from office. But then basically the father of Masonry, Prince Hall Masonry in Alabama, Simon S. Ash, is serving as the Grand Master. And I got this through the CCFC report out of Arkansas. And then I also saw it in Missouri and some of the other states. So, filling in information is the best that we can do at times. However, I think it's imperative. James talked to me earlier this week about checking he checked a newspaper.com and more information that came out within the course of a week. And I think that's what we should be doing diligently in terms of how we research our Grand Lodges, research our history. You got to keep going because you're going to find more and more information, even within the same course of a week, but also in the same database.
Hey, brother Collins, and I know we're talking about our brothers in Florida, but you and I, we work a lot on Alabama history, because you as a grand historian and myself, because my mom's entire family's from there, as we all know. But I have a question though. I think it's really amazing that you had a Prince Hall Grand Lodge in Alabama in 1774, 75. I think we should do a whole episode on that, because that's what you just told us. So I think that's really amazing. I would love to learn how that happened.
Yeah. But enjoy the charter y'all got today, the second day y'all started. But anyway,
Oh boy.
but seriously, that the updating of information in terms of our history, slowly but surely, is something useful that all of us can kind of latch on to. If there's gaps in your history, ask for them. If you don't know certain things, ask other historians, because between me talking to all three of the other panelists, we were on the phone literally for the past month. Hey, have you seen this? No, I haven't seen this. Have you talked to XYZ? Have you talked to Felix? I'm like, no, I haven't talked to Felix. Well, I'm gonna try to find it. It's basically all of us working together through the chat room. Brother Alex Benton hit me up on this, asking for some proceedings regarding Arkansas. And that's how the information flows between Prince Hall Freemasonry, because it's so much information in there. I know Brother Black did a heavy lift in terms of gathering information on Kansas. Nobody knew that he's the one that basically, he and two others were basically the catalyst for grasping the information on Kansas. And then, it's passed out to others. And then it's a benefit that all of us work together. But a lot of people don't know what happens in terms of the actual research to find the information. There are people in the stacks finding information. That's why sometimes when people ask for things, some people say no, or they don't want to give up the information because you work so hard and there's no information flow that goes back and forth. But I really think that we did pretty good. Do we have James and Dave? Are we ready for answer some questions?
Yeah,
I actually have a question. I'm sorry.
Before we jump into that, we're talking about information sharing. This show, we didn't think it was going to get as much heat as it did. Then once we saw the poll and it got up to, I guess the numbers got about 70, 80. But yeah, people really want to know about Florida. And we've been digging a lot for this last month. I want to give a shout out to Brother Ralph McNeil. I had bounced some ideas off him regarding daily. And that's how he told me, hey, you need to check out Harmony Grand Lodge of Delaware. So I definitely want to do that. And for the Florida historians, for your first Grand Master, Joseph Robert Love, he was also the first Grand Master of the Independent Grand Lodge of Georgia, which was established in 1874. And for information about him, there's this book called The Negro in Savannah. This man has an amazing history. He was the first African American to graduate from the University of Buffalo. He was very good friends with all of our early past Grand Masters, John DeVoe, Lewis Toomer, at AK Desmond. They went to the same church together in Savannah. If I remember correctly, I believe it was Love who actually married our third Grand Master and his wife. One interesting to note about Love, Love was, as you see from the picture, he was dark skinned. And this kind of led to a split in the church because he got kicked out of his church in 1872 for being dark skinned. Then he went to Albert G. Mackey personally and asked him about National Grand Lodge stuff. Started the Independent Grand Lodge of Georgia. Independent Grand Lodge of Georgia. He later ends up in the Caribbean, I believe, and he's buried in Jamaica. There's a bust of this man, I believe, in Bahamas. He was inspiration to Marcus Garvey. This man has a very amazing history. So if you're a Florida historian, this man needs to be elevated in your history. And I turn it back over to you, Brother Collins.
Appreciate you, Brother Dave. James, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I have a question because coming in from the chat, brothers and sisters out there are asking about Rosewood. I know that that city, you know, played a big part in the rash of race riots and whatnot that was going on back in the early 1900s, 1920s, and there's a popular film about that event. And there's a lot of not just, you know, a lot of times people read in Masonic symbolism and stuff like that, but they actually show, you know, Masonic lodges and how there was a lodge in this town that was, you know, a center of the society. So has anybody done any research on Rosewood at all, and the Prince Hall presence in that area?
I've done some research on it. Well, you know, first of all, the that Prince Hall Lodge, I think it was Prince Hall number 9 or something like that, that it was called in the movie. That actual lodge name was called Rosewood number 148. That lodge was there in the early 1900s, 1909, 1910. You see the Carrier family, you know, as a Elias Carrier, who was worshipful master of the lodge actually in 1909 and 1910. Um, that whole situation in Rosewood, you know, unfortunately, I mean, it was bad. You had a woman, you know, who lied, said that a black man had assaulted her, you know, which caused an uprising in that small town. There were members of that lodge. We don't have a lot of proceedings on it. The furthest that I've had was 1910. I do believe Brother Ralph McNeil informed me that they have a 1915 proceeding with Brother Sylvester Carter being a member of that lodge. The early members of that lodge would be, you know, uncles, you know, and great uncles and things of that nature to what's his name, Arnett Turner Goins, which is, if anybody remembers that, he is the one, descendants of one of the last survivors of Rosewood, who gave testimony in 1994, you know, in Florida, when they were trying to seek restitution from the Rosewood massacre. His father, actually, his father's name was George Goins. His uncle was H.F. Goins, and he was actually a member of Rosewood number 148 in 1909 as well as 1910. Um, like I said, I mean, it was a tragedy. I do believe years back they were doing some excavating out there, and they found a sword. I do have a picture of that sword, which I'll post in the group later on once the show is over. They actually found the Tyler sword that was in the rubble from the fire. They actually do a yearly presentation in Rosewood. I don't know if they still do it now, but they used to do a yearly thing in Rosewood, more of a commemorative of the Rosewood massacre. Now, I don't know if the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge of Florida has gone down to participate, but I do know years ago there was an actual lodge under that jurisdiction. I don't remember the name right offhand, that went down for a cleanup. But in my opinion, I think that would be something, you know, that would be a great pilgrimage, you know, for the members of the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge of Florida, should, you know, Most Worshipful Grandmaster Gully sees fit.
You know, I think you know, you just taught me something about that, because I knew about the excavation and whatnot. I didn't know they actually found the Tyler sword. I think that's very impressive, you know. And when we talk about Masonic history and whatnot, I've often asked the question. We often know about you know, these really great photos and proceedings and whatnot, but I'm also very interested in historic Masonic artifacts that have to do with Prince Hall Freemasonry. And I think that sword is something that, you know, if I had, you know, $1 billion or $2 billion like Dave Gillarm and Ken Collins do, because by the way, everybody, just so y'all know, all the money that Prince Hall think tank makes in our imaginations, it all goes to Dave and Ken. They don't give me or Curtis anything, just so y'all know, even in our imaginations. but getting back to my point though, if I had, billions and billions of dollars to create, a Prince Hall Masonic Museum and art of archives and whatnot, and artifacts, that sword is something that I think would definitely need to be there, because that's a very important thing. So I thank you for that, Brother Black. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Now, something else, one of the other questions that I saw used, one of the questions that was asked a number of times is particularly um, why would the membership keep those people in? And I think James touched on it as well as Brother Black, and I think Dave talked about it in some previous episodes. A lot of times when you have what we consider a charismatic leader, or not only a charismatic leader, a Dickersonian type leader, more of a heavy-handed leader that uses the gavel of authority in terms of keeping people in check. That's what keeps a lot of those leaders in. And additionally, what you also see is the fear factor of suspension and or expulsion. That's waved over their heads. You better not say XYZ or else he'll suspend you, he'll expel you. Those type of things happen not only then, but it still happens today. I believe the caveat is that in those days, the brothers were given the opportunity, what I think nowadays, of balloting for an election. Um, they were given the ability to ballot for election, just like they're given the ability to ballot for election now. But then it was private, so nobody stepped up to the plate. I think it would have been a totally different scenario had Manigault ran and there was a private ballot for Manigault to run against Dickerson versus him leaving and starting his own Grand Lodge because of what he didn't like that the Dickerson was doing. I think that's a totally different scenario. But another piece that I wanted to also step back on that Dave kind of touched upon is one of the letters that C.F. Daly actually sent to the Grand Lodge of England, calling himself a past Grand Master. And again, he's listed as a past Grand Master inside of the Florida proceedings. However, he's never served as a past Grand Master. So these type of communications happened back then, and they still happen today, because we know of a gentleman that drove a truck and he claimed to be a past Grand Master of a jurisdiction, but he was never a past Grand Master. Did he say he was an honorary past Grand Master? But these are the type of scenarios that have happened throughout the beginning of Masonry. People claiming to be have XYZ status, XYZ title as well. What was the other question we had? Has anyone been able to verify how Harmony Lodge ended up being renumbered as number 1?
I guess I'll try to take that one. I have a working theory. It's just a working theory. And I'm basing this off what happened in Georgia in 1888. Usually when the two Grand Lodges merged, and once again, I'm speaking just on how it happened in Georgia. The Grand Secretary sent out a request to all lodge secretaries and asked them to submit the date that their lodge was chartered, so that they could compile that and reorganize or renumber the lodges based off when the lodges were chartered, going from the oldest to the youngest. So I'm just assuming that as something, maybe it's something that Harmony Lodge submitted in 1879 and stating that they were the oldest lodge, and that's why they were chartered. They would see the number 1. But there's also a claim that Solomon Lodge is the oldest lodge in the state of Florida, which is also very confusing because, as I posted earlier in the week, there was a request in later years for a deputy from Georgia to go to Monticello and check on the status of Solomon Lodge, which makes absolutely no sense at all. So as far as, I guess, anything else, that's the only thing I can come up with as to why Harmony would have got to number 1. It was probably because they were the oldest, at least what they submitted was stated that they were the oldest lodge in the state.
Thank you, brother Brother Dave. We also got a little, we got a note from Brother Jerry Urso from the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge, and he stated that the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge does participate in the Rosewood Foundation, and they made a presentation last year at the Rosewood banquet, and he also serves on the board of directors, and glad to hear that. Another tidbit as well is that during the preparation for the show, we did have contact with members of the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge as well, just to gain some more information. And then what I think Brother Gillarm also stated it, and that we needed to make sure that we passed it along, that the information that we have will be given directly to the Grand Historian, and then that's their job to do what they do with the information that we receive, the presentations as well as the proceedings. I have a packet of proceedings to get um, to the Grand Lodge as well. Do we have any more questions, Brother Morgan, that you saw?
Let me see here. I wasn't looking, so let me make sure. I don't see anything.
Yes.
See, I feel like I'm not gonna lie. I feel like the odd man out tonight because you guys got to talk about all the fun stuff, and I just me and TW Long over here. But it's all right.
Yeah. The question I had, well, the question I see that was posted is, was CC Manigault suspended at the time he stole the facsimile? And I believe that's for you, Brother Black.
No, he wasn't. CC Manigault was serving as a grand secretary when he stole that facsimile. He literally left. He hadn't been brought up on charges. He wasn't expelled from the Union Grand Lodge until after he left and formed that Grand Lodge.
Okay.
Any other questions you see, Brother Dave?
Yes. I can't remember if you asked this one or not. It says, why would a jurisdiction elect and install a man who has proven not to keep himself above reproach? Pedophilia is a serious charge. How was he able to avoid these very serious legal issues, and who covered the cost?
I think we kind of touched on that already. Like I said, the only thing I could say is, I think it's very easy for us, 100 or 150 years or whatever it is, after the fact, to sit back and judge a situation. But I mean, if you look at, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but I'm just using it as an example. If you look at the situation with the Catholic Church, with that scandal, you look at scandals in office, in the White House under was it President Clinton and all that type of stuff, or any other man or woman in high in positions of high office, when they're charismatic, when they are authoritarians, when they have enough, or they have the right people around them that kind of protect them, or that enforce their will. I think it's power. It's like the old saying goes, power corrupts. And so that's what I think that's really the only way that we can say it. But we weren't alive, way back then, so we don't know all the politics. We know what we have on record and what we've presented. But again, I think it's one thing to kind of say, oh, this is how it should go. This is we should get rid of this person. Well, I mean, we have people today, in different offices, whether it's in Masonry or Eastern Stars or outside of our organizations and in other organizations that we're in, that we might not think should be in office. Okay. But people from 100 years from now will say, why didn't they just get rid of that person? Well, it's more complicated than that. And that's just the simplest answer that I can think of, aside from what everyone else has already kind of said about it.
Let me chime in on that. Now, Dickerson was charged, but he was also found not guilty. Now, the way that he paid for it, that question, seems like it's kind of leaning towards, he used Grand Lodge funds and stuff like that. I'm gonna make this statement. We don't have any information on him actually using Grand Lodge funds to foot that bill. He himself was actually a prominent businessman, so he might have had the money to pay for his own legal fees. But as far as we know, we don't know how he paid for those legal fees. But we do know that he was ultimately found not guilty, and that's what matters.
We had another question that just popped in, and it asks, were we able to find any information that says that the Grand Lodge building, the building is currently sitting on property that was transferred to Harmony Lodge number one? Any type of information that the rest of the panel has seen? I have not seen anything to that ilk.
No, I haven't seen anything like that. I think that that's something, in my view, that could either be directed to the Grand Lodge or might even be public record in regards to deed records and whatnot. But not, no, I don't. Dave or Curtis might know, but I don't.
Yeah, I didn't even in my scope of research, I didn't even attempt to look into anything like that. But as Brother Morgan stated, that could easily be found out by contacting your Grand Lodge trustees, or they said it's public record as to how the Grand Lodge acquired that property. So I really don't know what a direction to go in.
Okay, perfect. Well, we're hitting that right around that hour and a half time mark. So we're going to go ahead and finish up our closing statements, and we'll start with you, Brother Morgan.
Okay, well, once again, it's always a pleasure to be here on the Prince Hall Think Tank. I always look forward to these lively discussions, and I just can't thank the support that we get from our viewers, because we could not do this show without you all. This is it's something I've we've taken and run with it, and you guys have run with us every step of the way, and I can't thank you enough. We're actually at episode 20, if you can't believe it. So after the next month's episode, Prince Hall Think Tank will be able to drink. They'll be old enough to drink and vote and do all that great stuff. So it'll be 21. So I think that's a great accomplishment there. I do want to make sure that I mention, and since we are talking about Florida, I want to make sure I spend a special shout out to a good friend and brother of mine, Brother Marlon Honeywell. Oh, Worshipful Master Honeywell. Excuse me. I don't want to get beat up. Worshipful Master Honeywell is also, for those who don't know, he's also the president of the Lux et Tenebris chapter of the Phylaxis Society, which I happen to be a member of as well. And the chapter has recently published and released the 2017 transactions of the society, of the chapter. For those who are not aware, Lux et Tenebris chapter is a special chapter of the Phylaxis Society that is supposed to be made up of the most prominent and cutting edge Prince Hall writers and researchers of a given period. And for some strange reason, some kind of way, I was able to sneak in there. I don't know how I got in, but I got in there, and I actually was able to get a chapter in this book. If you want to know what it was about, I'll be more than happy. No, you know what? I think you should buy it. Go ahead and get it. It's on Amazon.com. So if you just put in Lux et Tenebris, I know it's in Latin. You just put that in Amazon, it'll pop right up. You can get it for your Kindle and also get the hard copy as well. So hopefully we'll be able to get Worship Master Honeywell on here at some point in time in the near future to discuss that. Other than that, I will see you all next month.
Thank you so much, Brother Morgan. Brother Curtis Black.
Thank you, Brother Collins. As always, it's a pleasure to be on the Prince Hall Think Tank. It's a pleasure to be on the panelists with such esteemed brothers. I hope that what my presentation brought was a further understanding of Florida history. The what can happen, the why can it happen, the how did it happen, and the result of it happening. I look forward to speaking with you all next month. I hope you all enjoyed the show. Hope you all continue to watch us and continue to support us, because we support you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Black. Brother Dave Gillarm.
Thank you for giving me the night off, Brother Collins. I definitely appreciate that. Um, it's truly been a lot that's been going on lately, and I definitely appreciate everybody for their support. As far as my presentation goes, I hope you all learned something from it. And as I stated in the beginning, it was not to discredit anyone. We just try to do the research and present things as I found it. As far as the information about Mount Moriah number 12, we'll be going more in depth with that in the upcoming book from Sims to James, the history and press Masonry in the great state of Georgia. So be on the lookout for that coming soon. I guess in the other aspects, I'm glad for everybody who stayed with us in this season with the New York Knicks. It didn't turn out the way we hoped, but there's always next year.
Moving on. Moving on.
But
Sorry, brother Dave. Let me mute James.
I'm the one telling the truth. We're gonna lose all our viewership. We talking about the Knicks. I'm trying to help the show out.
But I guess on the positive side, baseball season is right around the corner, so you can go ahead and pull out those Cardinals jerseys and start cheering or start rooting for the St. Louis Cardinals.
You know what?
So,
See, it's quiet,
Dave,
right? You see, it's quiet.
Brother Gillam, I'm about to stop. I'm about to remove recognition from you. Me and you are not going to be in fraternal amity in a minute. I don't know. Y'all pray for Brother Gillam, please.
But that's all I got for tonight, and just thank you all for your continued support.
Well, we got to close everything out. I love being the host of this show for once. No, seriously, we want to thank everybody for tuning in for another great episode. We thank Brother Black, Brother Morgan, Brother Gillarm for all their hard work and their great presentations. We also want to thank some of the brothers from the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge of Florida that kicked in information, the lady researchers that kicked in information, the brothers that kicked in information. Without you guys, the tidbits, again, in terms of history and researches, nobody does it on their own. And if they do, they're lying. Nobody rarely finds it on their own because somebody had to see it once before.
Shout out to past Grandmaster Anthony Stafford. I had a great conversation with him a few days ago.
It's my dude. Likewise, and like we had said, past Grandmaster Stafford, we don't get that info to Jerry. That way, we can start building up more information for you guys down there to add to your history. Another thing, just a housekeeping note: we cannot go any episode without giving a shout out to our illustrious founder, Brother Antonio Caffey. Missed out of sight, but never out of mind. We talked to him today, actually, and good conversation. As we move forward, there's going to be more information coming out. Again, there's so many projects that we're working on. Dave and I have at least 3 or 4 going. Brother Black and I have a couple going. James has a couple going on his end. Then I have a handful working in the background as well. So just be patient with us, because we're working on a lot of things. We're finding a plethora of information that we've never had in one collection before and able to share. Something else, Brother Michael Williams recently published a book as well. The name of the book actually slips my mind, but it's talking about the apprentice degree, and it talks about more of the philosophical aspects of the degree system for the apprentice degree. And Brother Marlon Honeywell actually wrote I believe it was the foreword for that. So again, keep your ear to the ground for more information. Any Grand Lodge updates, guys? Anything happening with your Grand Lodges before we hop off of here? Anything?
Only thing I'd like to say is, I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
I don't have anything with my Grand Lodge per se, but Union Grand Lodge of Florida should be going into session pretty soon. I think within the next 30 to 60 days. So if you can, if I'm able to, I'm gonna try to make it down there for that session. It should be a very eventful one. But as far as Georgia, we do have It Takes a Village coming up, which is our youth initiative. I think I mentioned that on a previous show. Our Deputy Grandmaster, Right Worship Corey Shackelford Sr. mentioned that. And the whole thing is about saving the youth. If we get to them young, maybe we can stop the issues that happen when they get a lot older. So if you could check our Grand Lodge page for that. If you can find a way to support that event, once again, it's called It Takes a Village. feel free to support, come out and support that event.
Sounds good. One thing I like to say is that I want to send a special shout out because March is always doubly busy for me Masonically because my lodge, Corinthian 18, we just celebrated 101 years as a lodge under the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC, and that was really special to me because when I was master in 2015 and 2016, the number one agenda that was in my administration was laying the foundation for our bicentennial. So I'm happy to see we've taken that first step. Now we got to get through the rest of these to get to 200. And even though none of us, well, maybe I'll still be around, who knows? But none of us will probably be there to see it. But that's what this is all about: taking the torch and passing it forward. And speaking of that, I want to also send a special shout out to my Grand Lodge and to our Grand Master, the Honorable Philip David, as we are celebrating our 169th birthday. Actually, tomorrow is actually the actual day, anniversary of the founding of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC, which was established, in 1848. See, Ken, you got that mind control thing. You got that mind control thing. But we were established March 27th, 1848, and so tomorrow is our 169th birthday. So I want to send a special shout out to all the brothers and sisters of the District of Columbia because you all support me from day one and through this project. So I just want to send a special shout out there.
All right, we're going to close. Go ahead.
Yeah, just before I get out of here, before I started doing this research and this presentation, I mean, I knew stuff about Florida history, but it would be disrespectful for me if I did not mention Sister Ann Huffman's name. She is actually the one who taught me Florida history. Also, Brother Eddie, who's in Florida, his research, on the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Florida, FNAM, it was stellar. Man, shout out to them, and just a thank you for for everything that you all about taught me and shared with me.
We appreciate you, Brother Black. And just the last thing before we close out here, the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alabama has recently instituted its Grand Lodge renovation project. It's a very lofty project, and we're actually hitting it very aggressively. And we actually have a GoFundMe page, and you can find it under Alabama Colored Masonic Temple Project. All proceeds go directly to the through the foundation, and it goes directly to the work that for the renovation of the temple. Nothing is used towards staff. Nothing is used towards anything of that nature. All funds will be used towards the actual renovation and exact planning of the temple renovation. So if you can help out there, we really appreciate it. But again, we'd like to thank you for tuning in to tonight's episode. And remember, if you get a book, read it and give it to somebody else. Have a good one, guys.